This is the Roman Empire from Augustus to 200 CE, pages 220 to 235, a YouTube presentation by Jesus Morales and Mariah Roney. The Roman Empire under Augustus and onward was a significant period lived upon by millions of Romans and non-Romans alike in the Mediterranean area coming into the common era of human history. And while 200 years of a vast and glorious empire sprouted from its smaller yet still influential republic centuries before, we must first recall how the empire came to rise and how it would slowly come to a declining end. The Roman Republic just got done fighting against the Carthaginians in the Second Punic War, burning Carthage to the ground. They began expanding towards Greece, burning down the city of Corinth, known for being the barrier between Roman expansion into much of Greece. Following this, Romans began integrating and learning much of the Greek culture from the language, philosophy, and architecture. Upper-ranked Romans even learned to speak and read Greek. Also in Anatolia, Roman generals began getting much wealthier than the Roman senators, leading to large bribery and corruption amongst the Senate.
Large corruption in politicals was taking place after this. Marius was a Roman consul who was elected 7 times as a consul, dictating it a military necessity for him to continue being consul. He reformed the Roman army and was successful in battles in North Africa and northern Italy. Allegiance began growing amongst his soldiers to him rather than Rome. We start seeing a privatization of sorts in Roman armies, especially after another Roman consul named Sulu was successful in Antonian battles. Sulu became a dictator that was not threatened for almost 6 decades due to his 10,000-man bodyguard, leading him to replace much of the Senate with personalized sympathizers and supporters. Frequent civil war took place in which his army slaughtered thousands who went against him. In 73 BCE, a Roman slave revolt occurred led by a former gladiator named Spartacus. 2 years of putting down the revolts led to 2 general names, Cassius and Pompey, launching their political careers. Soon another military commander named Julius Caesar joined the trio in which all 3 divided the Roman Republic.
Crassus died in a campaign in 53 BCE, leading Pompey and Caesar to now compete against total power against each other. Pompey was supported by the Senate and Caesar by his army. Caesar was a brilliant military commander from a young age. At age 15, he joined the army and retained glory from his successful battle campaigns. But after the Senate ordered him to disband his army, he defied them and brought his army to Rome. This sparked a civil war between Caesar and Pompey, leading to a victory among Caesar in 48 BCE. Caesar chased Pompey around the Mediterranean, leading him to Alexandria, where Cleopatra, the last Ptolemy pharaoh of Egypt, was only 21 and in a power struggle for Egypt. Caesar dealt with the power struggle, wanting to annex Egypt afterwards, but Cleopatra changed his mind. Soon after, she bore him a son and moved with him back to Rome. From 49 BCE and for the next 5 years, Caesar became dictator, installing friends to political power, and even changed the calendar to have 365 and a quarter days, leading to 46 BCE having 445 days, and naming a war month after his clan, July. Unfortunately, in 44 BCE, he attended a Senate meeting without a bodyguard and was stabbed to death at 55 by members of the August body. Even his own brother-in-law, including most notably Brutus, were there to assassinate him. Civil war was on and off for another 13 years, but Caesar's will had his grandnephew named Octavius to be his adopted son and heir. While it was ruled that a Roman could not become consul until 42 years old, Octavius became consul at the age of 19. Caesar's former consul, Mark Antony, joined Octavius in killing the assassins of Caesar and destroyed them in Philippi, Greece. Octavius and Antony were brothers-in-law and worked together for a few years, but they soon fell out. Antony made a political and personal alliance and began a relationship with Cleopatra, who moved back to Alexandria after Caesar was assassinated. They had 3 children, and she hoped to see them become Roman rulers one day. But Octavius shut that dream down by crushing their forces in 31 BCE, leading Antony and Cleopatra to commit suicide. Octavius now added Egypt, his claim as the richest land in the world at the time, to the Roman lands.
During an empire born, Octavius was now one of the most powerful and wealthiest people in the world, thanks much in part to Egyptian riches from his annexation. He changed his name to Augustus, which means revered, and ruled from 27 BCE to 14 BCE. He was this powerful due to his relationship his relationship to Caesar, his wealth and loyalty from his powerful army, and the prestige honored to him by the Senate. He also named a warm month after him, August.
Augustus left the Republic and entered an empire that he had politically structured to stay intact as best as possible for 2 whole decades after his death, even during times of bad emperors in leadership. The legacy that Augustus left behind is the main reason why Rome was able to stay intact for so long after his death. For that, the empire's demise and collapse came slowly in the Western Mediterranean, with the Eastern Mediterranean part of the empire becoming the Byzantine Empire up until 1453 CE. Augustus had ruled the Roman Empire until he was 76, leading him 40 years to rule and manage an empire to his authority and getting the things he wanted done. His authority as ruler was vigorously ruthless, murdering more political opponents than the next 20 emperors combined. He used his immense wealth and his two marriages as political tools. A contributing factor was his focus on maintaining Roman infrastructure, usually rebuilding temples and theaters, and even using his wealth to fund public construction. He supported and sponsored Roman traditions, including athletic events, religious festivals, and even distributing grain to the poor, which helped in lessening revolts from occurring. He was able to reorganize the state and army administrations to be dependent on an emperor's favor, even creating a Praetorian Guard of 4,500 elite soldiers who were his personal guard. The Praetorian Guard would be very important in helping rid the empire of future emperors that after Augustus who failed in contributing to the empire's growth in any capacity.
After the reign of Augustus, none could come close to reaching his level of influence and superiority in the empire. Caligula fell miserably and was killed by the Praetorian Guard in 41 CE. His uncle Claudius proved to be semi-effective, but was poisoned by his wife. Some emperors came into power due to being adopted by an emperor due to the track record being so discouraging. Others attained power through civil wars or coups. But no matter how bad, the emperor was known by the literate and high classes of Roman society, as long as lower class citizens such as Spanish miners, Egyptian peasants, or Sicilian shepherds worked, paid taxes, and contributed to the military service, and Roman legends still attained victories in wars. Rome would continue to survive for a bit longer.
The road system in Rome made it very accessible for information to be shared and traveled across large distances. The coinage system was also very beneficial in trade and contributing to economic growth and commercial exchange. Infrastructure with advanced water systems, such as aqueducts, were a great way to maintain clear water for much of the population and for crops alike, including the plumbing and sewer systems in much of the cities. Soldiers and the army also helped to maintain the Roman Empire's vast size, helping put down revolts that would pop up now and then in different parts of the empire. These would usually occur at the edges of the empire, which is where many would remain in frontiers, but not much expansion occurred after the time of Augustus, due to there not being much more suitable land to conquer or occupy. The Roman economy was also beginning to slow down during the last 2 centuries of its existence, with the coinage system lessening in influence and value. When an empire such as Rome begins to slow down in its expansion and conquering, there is much less wealth coming in, leading to less overall growth for the entire empire and population alike. Farming, mining, and trade were also beginning to slow down with loss in diminishing returns with mining. Frequent crop failures and shortages that came from Egypt caused the rest of the empire to suffer, and trade not mattering as much as farming due to much of the resources being located within the empire's borders. But with all of this, emperors and Rome itself still indulged in popular culture to keep the populace entertained and amused with chariot races, gladiatorial combat, comic theaters, and Roman literature and architecture that still sprawled and grew during this time. In terms of class structure, slaves made up around 12 to 18% of the population, with the majority being plebeians, whose only difference to slaves were that they were reimbursed for their labor compared to slaves, even though they did almost the same work. Reaching the end of the once great empire, one of the last notable emperors was Marcus Aurelius, who managed well but could not overcome the irreversible decline and demise of the empire. A smallpox epidemic in 165 BCE killed around 10 to 15% of the population, spreading very rapidly due to the strong connections across the empire. After the death of Aurelius, he had no adopted heir, leading his biological son to take control of the empire, and that was not the best move for the empire overall. Roman coins also became basically worthless. Every general wanted power. Civil wars were all too frequent. This was the end of the Roman Empire. Traces and the effects of the Roman Empire can still be seen today in our present day society. From the structures and remnants of ancient Roman architecture, the cultural influences that were spread amongst the Eurasian and African continents, and even the Latin language, which shaped and spread to various areas, with many of our current languages deriving from Vulgar Latin during this time. Political, social, and military institutions, ideas, philosophies, culture, and much more in many parts of the Western world are still influenced from the once great and vast Roman Empire.